Hello friends, today is March 12th. Valeriy Klochok is with you again. Volodymyr Zelensky has given another interview. Well, practically every day he gives interviews to foreign media where he basically says almost the same things. But there are nuances. This time he once again repeated that pressure should be put on Putin, not on him, to end the Russian-Ukrainian war. And he says, "We need a peace agreement with Russia." On March 11th, yesterday, a U.S. delegation held a meeting in Florida with representatives of Russia, including Kirill Dmitriev, but they say there was an entire delegation present. This is Witkoff's report. Well, and Trump stated that the U.S. has already won in Iran. However, Iran continues to attack countries in the region and sink oil tankers. Oil prices have once again crossed the $100 mark. But there really is a lot of speculation regarding oil pricing. Let's sort all of this out. Subscribe and leave your comments. And of course, share this video with your friends and acquaintances. Let's start with Zelensky's interview. The publication Politico interviewed the president at great length about his specific perspectives on the future prospects for negotiations and the end of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Zelensky assured that Ukrainians are not ready to accept Russia's ultimatum regarding the transfer of vast tracts of land in eastern Ukraine. However, we truly need a lasting peace in order to finally stop this war. He says we need negotiations, and we support them. We do not trust Russia, but I think, he says, and I believe, that the Americans truly want to end this war. I hope that they will help us. But there needs to be more pressure specifically on Russia, not on me. And Zelensky also further assured that no final agreements have been reached yet, and any negotiations will likely be extremely delicate and complex. Well, and Trump, he says, is right when he says that Putin and I truly and deeply hate each other. He is right about that, but not about everything. Apparently, the president is hinting that he does want to sign an agreement after all, but is seeking the most favorable terms for Ukraine. Zelensky also stated that it is very important for Ukraine what the security guarantees will look like, but he says nothing is known about them yet. We do not have a clear answer yet. And on Friday, Zelensky will meet with Emmanuel Macron in Paris. They will discuss issues related to Ukraine's defense. This is the official announcement. Neither President Macron's administration nor the Office of the President of Ukraine is providing any further details. We will all be following this, friends, just as we will be following what happened yesterday in the state of Florida. It turns out that Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, together with Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, met with a high-level Russian delegation led by Kirill Dmitriev in the United States of America. What did Witkoff write about this? In Florida, the Russian delegation led by Kirill Dmitriev met with the American delegation, which included Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and White House Senior Advisor Josh Grubow. The two teams discussed a wide number of important issues and agreed to maintain contact in the future. That is all for now. No further information has been reported. Earlier, Zelensky mentioned that next week there could be negotiations in a trilateral format. Steve Witkoff also spoke about this. And this meeting, the meeting that was supposed to take place this week, was cancelled by the Americans, most likely due to the situation in the Middle East. So, friends, once again, I emphasize we are keeping an eye on this. Although, to be honest, we no longer have high expectations for these negotiations. Today on the channel, I will be discussing this in detail with my colleagues, asking for their opinions on what they think about the upcoming negotiations. But for now, friends, a very brief update on the strikes against Ukraine. There weren't many Shaheds last night, just 94. We managed to shoot down 77 of them. Of course, not all of them were Shaheds. There were other drones as well, but the vast majority were Shaheds. Unfortunately, 16 strike drones hit 11 locations, and there was also debris falling at another site. At night, the Russians attacked the Menska community in the Chernihiv region. Unfortunately, a 15-year-old girl was killed there and her parents were injured. In Zaporizhia, the number of people wounded as a result of Russia's strike the day before has risen to 12. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, again due to a Russian attack, 2 people were injured. In the Kherson region, unfortunately, there is also a man who was killed. Another 23 people were wounded. Among the wounded is a child. We also launched drones over Russian territory. It is reported that in the Tikhoretsky district of Krasnodar Krai, a drone hit a motor depot. A fire broke out there, covering an area of 150 square meters. Not a lot, but still a fact. Well, regarding the situation in Iran, it is currently concerning everyone in the world. Much of the future historical course of all humanity will depend on the events in the Middle East, without exaggeration. Donald Trump stated that the United States of America has already won in Iran. This is not the first time he has made such a statement. Speaking before supporters in Kentucky, he noted that we have won. Believe me, we have won. You know, you never want to talk about victory too early. We have won. In the very first hour, everything was already over, Trump emphasized, and wrote about it on Telegram. Our winner. So what are we all supposed to do about this? And indeed, Trump is now making very controversial statements. He says, we have won, it's already time to wrap things up. But then he immediately says, we are not going to end anything. In this way, he is now sowing chaos in the minds of both the public and others in order to confuse them about his future actions. But has he himself figured them out? That, my friends, is a rhetorical question. Because in the administration of Donald Trump, the estimated costs for the first 6 days of a military operation against Iran amount to $11.3 billion. This is, to be honest, a very huge figure. The Pentagon does not have enough money to continue military actions. They will have to turn to Congress, but making a decision, they will not be easy. However, it is possible. For now, Trump still holds a majority there. But what the future political fate and overall prospects of Trump will be is still an open question. I do not rule out that they will initiate impeachment proceedings, but they definitely won't remove him from office. That is practically impossible to do. However, the situation will become an internal matter for America itself, while the rest of the world will simply continue doing what it has been doing. For example, what Iran is doing. So, what is Iran doing? Iran is escalating the situation in the Middle East. President Masoud Pezeshkian named peace conditions, including reparations to Iran and international guarantees, as the only way to end this war unleashed by the Zionist regime and the US. In other words, he now blames the Americans and Israelis for everything, despite his earlier different stance. This means recognizing Iran's legitimate rights, paying reparations, and establishing strict international guarantees against future aggression. And indeed, the situation is now so complicated that, for example, CNN reports that on Thursday morning, Gulf countries intercepted a new wave of Iranian drones and missiles that attacked oil facilities and tankers. Although earlier, Pezeshkian had promised not to strike civilian infrastructure in the region. The Ministry of Defense of Saudi Arabia stated that it intercepted and destroyed more than 20 drones in the eastern part of the country, where the kingdom's oil fields are located. Bahrain stated that the Iranian attacks were aimed at fuel storage tanks. The United Arab Emirates announced that their air defense systems are responding to missile and drone threats from Iran. Dubai's government news agency reported that a drone crashed into a building near Creek Harbor, causing a small fire that was quickly contained. Also, friends, Iranian forces reportedly struck 2 oil tankers in the Persian Gulf near the Iraqi port of Basra. As a direct result of the attack, at least 1 person was tragically killed. Iran claimed responsibility for this strike and stated that a submersible drone detonated, saying, "This evening, 2 oil tankers in the Persian Gulf. Due to the attack, Iraq's oil ports have ceased operations." According to the country's official reports, the attack took place in Iraqi territorial waters. The Iraqi authorities stated, "We reserve the right to take legal action in response." No one wants to go to war with Iran at this time. Earlier, on March 11th, it was reported that unidentified projectiles struck a Thai dry cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz. 20 crew members of the ship Meru Neri were rescued. A total of 3 individuals are still reported as missing. The vessel, which belongs to a local Thai transport company, was attacked shortly after leaving the port of Khalifa in the United Arab Emirates. Earlier, American intelligence had warned that Iranian forces had begun mining the shipping channel of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is using small minesweepers, each capable of carrying 2 or 3 mines. Trump, on the other hand, says there's nothing to worry about. You can pass through the Strait of Hormuz, but not everyone manages to do so, although some are trying. On February 28th, earlier, on the first day of the US and Israeli military operation against Iran, it was reported that the IRGC had banned ships from passing through the Strait of Hormuz, but supposedly made an exception for China. It is currently unclear how many ships are passing through this strait, as they are traveling with their transponders turned off. On March 3rd, the IRGC confirmed threats to open fire on any vessel attempting to pass through the strait. But they are not targeting everyone. On March 10th, Trump threatened that the United States would strike Iran 20 times harder if Tehran tried to block oil supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. But it seems that the blockade on the same day, friends, March 10th, a Greek oil tanker managed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. The tanker Shenluksk, with a capacity of 1 million barrels, was carrying Saudi oil. The situation there is extremely difficult, and against the backdrop of such events, oil prices jumped again last night to the level of $100 per barrel. Right now, the price is fluctuating more or less within this range. We're talking about Brent crude oil. The spike happened, friends, despite the fact that on Wednesday, the member countries of the International Energy Agency unanimously agreed to release a record 400 million barrels of oil onto the world market. At first glance, that seems like a lot, but it's only enough to meet the world's oil demand for 4 days. Of course, not all oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. According to various estimates, that's between 14 and 20%. But the events in the Middle East can't be described solely as attacks on the Strait of Hormuz right now. A military operation by Hezbollah against Israel is beginning. Yes, the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah launched about 100 rockets at Israel in the evening. New York Post, citing official sources within the Israeli army, reports indicate that Hezbollah managed to overwhelm the Iron Dome missile defense system, and Israel was able to intercept only half of the rockets launched. I will report on the specific consequences of the attack a bit later. Furthermore, the UN Security Council is also actively responding to the ongoing situation in the Middle East. They have adopted a resolution condemning Iran's attacks on countries in the Middle East. The resolution was drafted by Bahrain and supported by 135 countries. The document was adopted with 13 votes in favor. This is the UN Security Council, not the UN General Assembly. Well, of course, Russia and China, as expected, abstained from voting. That's why stabilization in the East is extremely important. But it would be much better if the RGC regime there were simply and completely destroyed. So far, that hasn't been achieved. What will the next steps be, friends? Let's follow along together. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and the Telegram channel. Find the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Love and respect to all. Glory to Ukraine.